Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? It's me, Dakota Fishman, and today we're going to do an overview of my 530-ish million mite rally trip. Now, as you can tell, right here dead front, I've basically got, this is what my gear set looks like. Now, I wouldn't really stress this too much, but like this is what my economy gear looks like. It's just basically monster hunting gear, but not. Because that's literally all I have on my account, right? Now, some people like to make full fake gear sets. A lot of people love to go over and beyond in a lot of different areas. As you can see, I'm not stressing anything too much here, but I will say that from my experience so far, typically, if you can get access to things like Jade Worms, if you get the counter skill bonuses, that's a huge plus. Obviously, you can see I don't have them all, but it would be nice to have them, but it's one of those things where you either have it or you don't. The biggest pitfall for everybody that ever builds a trap is they either don't account well for how much might they're going to have when they're done doing their research. I can show you that as you can see, I went through and actually did T4s. That really isn't necessarily all that important. I could have probably gotten away with just using tier 3s even, but you want to have these counter monster hunting trees, same deal. You really don't need to focus hardly anything into that. Upgrade defenses, same story. Upgrade military, same story. I mean, really, about all I'd argue for is get your innate talents, get the things that you're going to use, but don't bother getting the things you don't need because you're not gonna get a whole lot of leverage out of that. Because as you do that, you're reducing the amount of troops that you have available to you. Because effectively, the more might you have, the less you're going to be able to play with. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a 500 mil rally trap. Yeah, you could be 600 mil, 700 mil. Hell, you could even argue that you're a trap at 1.2 billion if you're going to take multiple rallies at a time. But I'm trying to focus on the fact that mistakes can be made once you've made that decision. You cannot go backwards. So a lot of these guys, they'll do it and then they'll regret it later because they go, oh, well, if only I was this or only if I was that. Now, I don't regret getting the wedges. I think there are some that, it's like, oh, that's too much mine. Yeah, okay, that's fair. If that's what you want to do, don't get calf wedge then. Just get imp and range wedge. Don't even bother in calf. I say this from experience. I've gotten myself in worse positions trying to defend in cav than I ever have in infantry and range. And a large part of the reason for that is because a lot of the time, you'll find yourself getting hit by mixed rallies, and you don't want to be in cav if you get hit by mixed. Minus the fact that you oftentimes will find yourself getting hit by cav, or you'll get hit by infantry. And on the one off chance that you do get hit by a ranged march, which doesn't happen a couple of KVKs that I've ever had, I don't really fairly feel as if like I absolutely had to defend off of it any more so than if I was, in other words, I'd be begging for a range march on a good day, I'm begging for an inf march on a good day, and I'm begging for a cav march. It doesn't matter so much as you're not going to care as much. But what will ultimately happen, especially with mixed rallies, is if you're not, you're playing the dice as much as they are. They're just hoping you fail, and they're hoping they catch you off guard. So one thing that you'll notice here is, I'll keep it really quick and simple, but basically it comes down to just getting the bare minimums, get your wedges, get your, if anything, if you want to go down this path, add more to these if you want. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. It's just 10%, but I don't know. I think there's more of an argument to be made that you can take away the excess might by throwing that into, there are different ways to skin a cat here. Okay. Now, as far as breakthrough goes, that's a bare minimum. I think you really don't want to stretch going any further, though, because once you get breakthrough, I think that's really all you need out of military command. Now, familiars is a hot topic because, okay, now you got your packs, you get up to pack 4s even, right? Do you do it? Do you not do it? And then if you go familiar battles, do you get your first slot, your second slot, your third slot, or your fourth slot? How do you know, or maybe even 5 slots? Do you go through that tree completely? I'm of the opinion that really you only need about 3. You could go as far as 4, but I think the more you do that, you again go into the realm of how much might do I possibly need to be adding to my account? Now, as far as my wall is concerned, I'm basically using 2 cav and 2 ranged and an imp. Now, is that ideal? Probably not. You know, it's like I could just as easily taken out the cav bit of this and throw in, say, another imp hero. It really doesn't necessarily have to be. I think, if anything, you want to primarily focus on your strengths. So in this case, I've bonused up to my range. I'm bonusing up my infantry, and then I'm weakening against an imp march. I think that's the most logical play you can make, but there are obviously other options out there for, those of you that have actually got better trap accounts than mine. But one thing that I have recently started doing too, and I think this is kind of it's more of a nifty thing to have, but it adds up over time, is just get your gem and gremlin, get your stroke of fortune so you've got gems rolling in, and then you also want to get some of your lucky stars. And I only say this is if you're wanting to play this game mildly free to play, you're not going to be able to do this right out of the gate in a year's time without spending a couple $1,000 pretty quickly. It's, I think, it's north of $5,000 just to get to a point like this in the game. If you've never wondered why people are like out and about building trap accounts, it's because your rally leads are going to cost obviously a lot more, but the time expenditure versus time and money is very dependent on what you're able to do. And I think it varies too on events. It really depends on what you do and how you do it too. But that said, if you're grabbing your forge supplies and stuff like that, you've got your gear. And again, you're basically focusing down on trying to improve your mix stats as possible. So my mix stats right now are 272, 252, and 257, and that's sitting in nothing important. If I swap to get dunked, and then if I go into here and I swap to trap talents like I'm in right now, which trap talents wise, I'm just dumping it all into health. Offense 1, 2, and 3. At 3, all of 2 almost. And then I ignored squad health 1 and squad defense 2, and then the beginning ones I just didn't even bother doing. Now, if I had more talent points, I'd dump them into it. But now that I've done that, right, you'll see that I'm at 500, 528, and 505. This is, I think, a relatively healthy amount, but anytime people ask me, okay, can I trap on like 300% stats? You can defend against it, but what you've done is you've made it a lot easier for somebody to hit you and make your loss to gain ratio a lot worse. You need more to do the same, and that's not really efficient, not to mention the fact that you more than likely will not count them. Now, this is where we get into composition. Now, I, for one, have this composition has been pretty solid for me so far. If you've got 6.5 to 6.5 mil in these two spots, I don't bother with the Reptilian Raiders just as much as I need. And I'm building more catapults, ironically, because, well, you get a lot of people that'll spam, so I'll build some ballistas and I'll build catapults just for the people that are spamming Pyrus and the people that are spamming in general. And then I'm popping about 2.2 million. Now, you can manage on a lot less than that. I have taken rallies with like 1.6 to 1.7 mil. I've done it even as low as like a low ball 800K. It's possible, but your trade-off is going to be huge. And I say that because it's like anything in this game, depending on the type of person you're trapping too. A lot of people, they'll look at that number and go, oh God, how did you take a rally from X, Y, and Z with only those amount of troops? By X, Y, and Z, what I'm saying is let's say you're up against the Emperor. He's got max stats. And it seems like every day, it's not uncommon that, even now, okay, you go in here and you're looking at the artifact hall and you might have noticed that IGG just keeps on adding and they keep on adding. And, it's like, okay, yeah, that's 16%, that they just keep tacking on. Sooner or later, they're going to get to a point where the expense ratio in terms of what you have in gear and as juxtaposed to what they have, there'll be at least 100% plus more and commonality for everybody in this game that it's going to get ridiculous. And it's already gotten to that point. And I say that because I've been playing the game for a number of years and it's not getting any better. If you want to see where a lot of your time is going to be invested in going in the future for all traps in this game, it's going to be partly in the artifact hall. And the strategy here isn't really all that complicated. As you can kind of tell, all you need to do is really just focused in on whatever is giving you leader bonuses and anything that's giving you basically HP. And you're not going to want to stress on the Fury stats as much. You can, but I don't think there's any sense in it. If you're trapping, you really shouldn't be in Fury. I'm not saying you can't be, but you put yourself in a really dangerous position should you get rallied multiple times in a row and you can't cover it. Because then you'll wind up zeroed. And that has happened many times to people I know, and I've seen it happen one too many times. Now, like that, hey, 10,000 Holy Stars, and I didn't spend for it. Yippee-ki-yay, as far as I'm concerned. But, yeah, so, it's like, all right, now how do you leverage that? Well, you save it, and you build it up. So you're not going to burn that all in one place. So you're just going to hang on to those Holy Stars, and you're just going to keep on going. Now, if IGG had been nice enough, they'd have probably, maybe told me when the next roller coaster of a update would occur, but you never know when they're going to arrive. So you have to kind of look out and check, forums and look into Discord communities that, they'll normally have a group of people out there that'll be ahead of it, But the main thing is so with everything that I've shown you so far, right? I've got my gear, I've got my talents, I've got my wedges. Now, how do you actually play as a trap? I think really ultimately how you can play it is really up to you. There's many different ways to skin a cat here. And I say that phrase more than once, and it's getting alarming. But the main thing here is that if you want to trap against other players and you want to make yourself a target, the first thing you need to do is first, pick out what you're going to look like. Obviously, sitting in war gear is not a very good way to sell it. The other thing, too, is, it's like, I've come to find that if you name yourself something different on a regular basis and you're not constantly getting yourself in the position of other players, it's not really untypical to find yourself getting hit. During KVK, the most action you're going to get in a KVK is like the first hour. Every hour after it is going to get substantially less busy. And so I find that, unless you trap after hours, you're going to have a really hard time. A lot of the time, it's especially if like you're I don't know, if you're on PC, for example, right? One of the advantages that people have been doing is they're actually setting up macros to be able to switch their gear as well as swap into different formations just by pressing a number. Now, if you're wondering, wow, what is this? How do I do it? And why on God Green's Earth are people doing it? Isn't this illegal? Couldn't they be banned? Well, as far as I can tell, I don't know anybody that has been banned. There are a number of people that are doing it. Now, if you want to know how to do that, you can do it through BlueStacks, okay? And it's nothing more than opening up the BlueStacks macro manager, okay? Clicking on your profile as you have it on record, clicking here, and now you can set it to, unrecord, set the keybind to 1, and now, okay, watch this. I press 1, it's going to go and pop to my gear, just like that. And it's not even, it doesn't even have there's not even a second thought involved with that, right? Now, of course, if you, let's say, I don't know, you want to swap back, well, press 2. And now you've got another keybind for another macro to do effectively the same thing, okay? But now, let's say if I type 4. Well, now it's going to go and it's going to swap to info edge and then close out and go to the profile screen, and vice versa. Okay, the principle behind that isn't really all that complicated, but it is it's a time-saving difference of probably about 5 to 6 seconds. Okay, so as opposed to like, okay, I got a guy that's going to hit me, I could freak out and click and misclick or something like that, or I could just tap 1, and I know within about 3 seconds of hitting that number, that gear will have been swapped. So if I know the march is walking and I can watch that march, and let's say it's down to the last 5 seconds, I can click 1 and I know it's going to be swapped in the last 2 seconds before he can even react. And then I could even go so far as making another macro that then clicks on random. It's like, you can get to that point where you finesse it to that point where it's not that bad. Now, is it scummy? I don't know, but I can tell you that a lot of people are doing it. But, in the grand scheme of things, it's like, where do you even begin with, like, okay, let's say I start trapping major players, go to a random kingdom. How do I make this something that I want to do, and is it worth it, right? Because I think a lot of people they'll talk about, oh, look at my gear, look at my stuff, look at how much money I spent. It's like, if you want a real answer here, okay, I don't think most people are going to find that being a trap is all that enjoyable, in the sense that you're going to spend most of your time, when you get done getting hit a bunch of times, you're going to go into Sanctuary and you're going to have some troops you're going to need to heal. And you'll get those troops back, and you'll wait probably about a week to get them all back and do it all over again. You're going to be burning through resources like it's no tomorrow. So you're going to need resources in order to maintain it. And of course, what happens to those troops? Well, you got to have speeds. And okay, if I factor in for every million or so troops that I'm burning, I'm probably making 15 to 30 days worth of speeds out the drain every time I get hit. It's like, if you can't put a numeric number to it, imagine spending $20 on a pack to do that, or through some other means, it's still going to cost you. It's like, there are obvious negative problems that come along with it, but would it be any better than being a filler? No. Like, arguably T5 fillers have it pretty bad too nowadays. It's like, in this game, it's just generally speaking, if the monetary side of that concerns you, yeah, probably shouldn't play the game. But beyond that, aside from what I've shown you as far as gear and all of that jazz, you might also be wondering about heroes. Okay? Heroes-wise, I didn't really bother getting too crazy into it. I even thought about getting Chronicler and Lore Weaver maxed out, but I kind of cut it short a little too early. And I even thought about doing Stormfox for a similar reason. And part of the reason why you want to do these heroes, and a lot of the reason why people do them, okay, is like, for example, Chronicler is your infantry counter boost, which is 15%. That's a pretty substantial bonus that you really can't ignore. Stormfox is interesting because it's a training speed boost. I don't give a damn about her HP or attack. It's the 20% training speed boost that I care more about, because of the expense that is involved in having to retrain troops. And because your gear is weaker, frankly, you're just going to have a harder time building troops. And it's going to take a lot more effort and a lot more energy to do. So as far as that is concerned, I don't know. It's like, if I had to make a recommendation, if you can do it, great. If not, don't sweat it. It's not like the worst thing in the world. If anything, base heroes in the game is really all you need. And there are some that you don't even have to bother with. Like, you don't have to bother with Death Knight, Night Raven, Death Archer. Like, you don't have to do all of them. So you don't really even have to sweat the small things, as far as that goes. But beyond that, I would say about 90% of your headaches are going to be attributed to gems, which is why I was mentioning how you could probably sustain this, at least reasonably anyway, through both Holy Star gains and also from the Trove, which, like, hey, I got a day's worth of, 30-day deposit coming up here in a day, but it's like, that effectively is how I would recommend you go about it if you're wanting to build a rally trap. And, as far as the total overview on this account, it's like, aside from the gear, I guess, what else is there really to talk about? I guess you could probably go so far as to argue that, yeah, you could go so far as to, like, whether or not should you have a stash of, like, I think a lot of things that people think about oftentimes are actually the buildings. And even though I've kind of briefly shown them, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 manors, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 infirmaries, okay? Or 10, technically. 10 total infirmaries, with the remaining 6 to supplement for supply. And even then, I'm only covering 428,000. I think, reasonably speaking, if you can cover a solo march, that's within reason, It's like, it's very difficult for someone to fill a full 420 some odd K stack if I counter them. Now, yeah, you can find yourself in a bit of a mess every time, but when that happens, it's all going to get thrown into Divine Resurrection for the most part, 50% of the way all the time anyway, so it's like, I really wouldn't stress that so much. But about the only other thing, really, I guess, that it could be said is as far as, whether or not should you get like an altar boost, whether or not should you get a prison boost, whether or not having all these buildings up to 25 is necessary. I think it's like a bare minimum you're going to have them at 25. I know there are people out there that, yeah, they'll go like to Castle 16 and no further, just because they can get the advantage of not getting rallied. But that's more of a solo trap type of thing. But I don't know. It's just that pretty much sums it up as far as my trap account is concerned. And if you want to know any more, just ask in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching, and if you're interested in trapping and you're wanting to know more about the subject, or even just watch it, I've more than likely will have content from time to time if it comes up. But it's not uncommon for me to go through an entire KVK and staring at a wall, because a lot of people know who I am. And if they don't, then they're going to be pretty surprised, and you'll more than likely see it. So, thank you guys for stopping by. See ya.